All right, you guys here on Facebook. I think I'm also live nowadays on YouTube Live. It took a little while because I had to figure out some new things, right? There's always weekly a new challenge here on the place. But as every day, as every week, what stays the same as I'm here every week, 12 o'clock, most of the weeks in a year, every time with a new topic. Today we are going to talk about destiny and fate, and is that something that is real, right? Is that something like predestiny or fate? And it is one of my viewers visitors. Actually, he's typically also live with me here on Zoom. And if you want to do that, by the way, you can still drop me a message, and then either Irina or I will bring you into the Zoom party, and then we can talk about, is fate and destiny, is that something real or is that not something real, right? Now it's well, that's not an easy question, but I'm never shy to also address the non-easy questions, right? Because it's always, I did some research, besides the fact that actually I think maybe about 100 episodes ago I also talked about this topic. I have to look it up, but I'm sure I talked about destiny once or twice before on this show, and but I'm going to do it again and do maybe a slightly different take. I always start a little bit with some quotes. And the first one is actually from my previous, no, actually not our previous, but the one before that, President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama. And he said, "Destiny is not written for us, but by us. Destiny is not written for us, by us." I like that. "Actions are the seed of fate. Deeds grow in our destiny." Another former president, Harry Truman, said that. Our history is not our destiny, Alan Cohen. I think I like that too, because it fits really well. What I've been talking about is that, our history doesn't always mean that we have to continue in our future. But here you have, I did a podcast and a show on the power of now, where we say, what happens in the past does not mean that it has to happen in the future. That is all correct, but never forget that how you have built up your history has a lot of influence how it will be in the future, right? And you can always, remember, your life is consists out of three things. It's your beliefs, your habits, and the decisions you make. Now, your beliefs is often coming from your history. Your habits definitely are formed all in your history, and the way you make your decisions are also formed in your history. So all these quotes that, and I think I do that a lot here in the place, and we have a lot of fun with that, is, all these kind of little sayings that people just take over and say, "Oh, that's a really great saying, like our history is not our destiny." Mr. Alan Cohen said that. And it's not entirely true until you make some big changes in one of these or all three of these areas. Because again, your belief system, your habits, and the way you make your decisions are all in your history. So it should actually say our history does not have to be our destiny. And so the truth is in the does not have to be. And that means you need to make a conscious effort to change that. Otherwise, if the train goes in that direction, you will not change the direction. It will keep on going in that direction. Does that make sense? Right? It's a conscious effort. So destiny is the push of our instincts to pull of our purpose, to the pool of our purpose. Okay, that's a little bit deeper, but I like that. Destiny is the push of our instincts to the pool of our purpose. A lot of people that I speak to, they feel they have some sort of an inner calling. With some people, it starts already relatively young, and with some people, it comes later in life. They just, suddenly switch direction, and becomes something completely else. And don't always think that, by the way, that is something that has always to do with your talents or something that you always has interest in. If I work with clients, I always do that research. Where are your interests? Where are your talents and all that kind of stuff? But unfortunately, despite of that, that works well, I also met some people who had a calling in a completely opposite direction that they have an interest in. And that's and for some strange reason, their life brought them back to their pet all the time until they said they finally gave in and they go, finally I do that. It's like the story of Job in the Bible, right? So that's true too. That's kind of a little bit magical. So one of the story that I remember well is a woman who she is from the Philippines, and I met her. She wrote a book about how she moved to the United States, and it was very abusive story as well. So, but anyhow, so that gives you just a little bit of a picture how this woman is. Very well read, a lot of humor and stuff like that. And then she bought a piece of land, and she came to me and said, "Hey, Jean, do you have some good business idea for that piece of land?" And yeah, I had many ideas actually, which but for some reason she said, "Well, I have this calling that I need to help orphans in my home country." And I said, "Is that what you like to do?" And she said, "Hell no." He said, "I don't like kids. I escaped that country to go away from poverty. And it's not that I don't want to help them. I would be more than willing to send them money and clothes and anything that I can do to help them, but to truly work with them and be among all these kids, that sounds horrible to me." But the end of the story is that she had that calling so often that she finally did it anyhow. So sometimes you have those stories too, and maybe you have a few of yourself. And can you call it destiny? I think that's a form of destiny, right? But she still had to take action. So that's interesting. And that, resonates with what TJ Jake said. There's a pull of our purpose. Maybe that's a calling, right? And when an inner situation is not made conscious, when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. Carl Jung, I almost try to quote him in the topics that I do. I think he's an amazing thinker, Carl Gustafsson Jung. And by the way, he was a friend of Laban and who is a great developer of modern dance and ballet as we know it right now. A lot of our dancing is influenced by them. What I discovered much later is Carl Jung and Laban were two friends, and therefore you see in Laban a lot of psychological and philosophical influence, and therefore you see in Carl Jung's writing a lot of reference to dance, right? I never quite understood that until those two things came together, talking about destiny. And but he says when an inner situation is not made conscious, so when you don't change something in yourself, everything feels like it happens to you. If you don't take control of your own life, it feels like other people take control of you. And I used to say that as a quote, if you don't work on your own dreams, you most likely work on someone else's dream. Yeah, most people in a job work on someone else's dream, not on their own dream, right? So that has a lot to do with fate and destiny too, right? Okay, so destiny is what you make it. Otherwise, you are at the mercy of fate. Stephen Redhead said it's more or less in the same direction, feels a little bit more negative. So I like to, maybe my most favorite of all these quotes that I have is from William Shakespeare. If you don't know who he is, you need to go back to school, right? And it's not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves. Yeah. So what remarkable is about these quotes is that some of them, like William Shakespeare, that's a few hundred years ago, and that's when religion had a huge influence on our thinking. But still, William Shakespeare wrote something that is actually pretty daring if you think about it. He says it's not in the stars that hold our destiny, but in ourselves, where most people in those days and still today believe that God has everything in his hands. no matter what you do, God will take a decision anyhow. And that's where fate and destiny is coming from and makes us a little bit confused. So let's, by the way, guys, don't think that I have the wisdom of this in my hands, because I don't. I'm just telling you what I believe and found, and then try to give a little bit opposite opinions as well. But I'm not sure that, today we have the final word on this topic. Is fate and the destiny a real thing? But I hope it gives us at least some, sparks to think about, right, and go a little bit deeper in this, and maybe you come up to your own conclusion. It's always your own beliefs, as we have talked about, but let's a little bit look at those two words, because they seems the most predominant in this discussion, is the word fate and destiny. And if I look a little bit to the side, it is just because I'm reading some stuff here. So the origin of the word fate comes from the Latin fatum, and that means that which has been spoken. So in other words, that's already predestined. Fate is just what happens to you, and a lot of people think that way, right? The word fatalism, is coming from that same word, right? So that means you cannot do anything about it, which lead, if you really believe that fate is already there for you, which lead to something pretty dangerous, I would say. Fatalism is a pretty passive, dangerous way that comes into you, because that means you have no control over anything. Everything is predestined, everything is set and spoken for already. So you have no control of it yourself. So, and then you just say, oh, what happened? There is something positive in that too, That's why I said, I promise you to do a little bit of the two balances, right? There are times that you have to just accept where you are and just let things go, which is a form of, there was fate for you for that day. You met an angry person, he was yelling at you. You can stay angry the rest of the day, or you can say, okay, that was my fate for today to meet this angry person. Could I have maybe prevented? Maybe, but this happened to me. So there is, on a mini cosmos scale, there is nothing wrong with just accepting where you are, right? Whether that was predestined or written in the stars somewhere that you met that angry person, that's all too, we don't know these things, right? So a while ago, Irene and I decided, well, actually, I asked her to go and eat an ice cream. And we came back from a long trip from a competition in Oklahoma, and so I said, I really want to have a good ice cream, and there is a good ice cream shop here in Dallas on Lower Greenville. That's a famous street for restaurants and stuff like that. So we went there, and I saw a parking lot, and I wanted to, you're very European. I parked my car often backwards if the spots are too tight. And the car, on the spot next to us, at least the spot where I wanted to park, he bumped into me when he was backing out, right? I got out of the car, I parked my car anyhow, I got out of the car and said something like, wow, that was not smart of us, or that was, stupid of us, or whatever. The man took that in the wrong way. Whether I said it in the wrong way, I don't know. Maybe I tipped him off, who knows that? But it became a thing that took at least 1.5 hours. There was a lot of yelling and aggression, mostly from the other person. If you know me a little bit, I do have a little bit of a temper, I must say. Over the years, I learned to control my temper, right? But I do have it, yeah. And it has nothing to do that I'm right or wrong. But at some point in time, I just can't take it anymore. And then I'm just becoming a macho guy. I literally want to take the guy down. I really wanted to. And well, you never know for sure if you can, because he might be, I don't know, an ex-Navy SEAL or something, right? But I must say I am not unskilled in the area of people taking people down. So I was pretty confident, and I was definitely angry enough to take the man down. And then something happened to me. Something unfolded in front of my eye, and it happened in a few seconds. I bet you that my whole life would look completely different right now Even if I had all the right, even if all the people who looked at us would say, you had all the right to take the guy down, I bet you my life would have been completely different right now. And I didn't. I kept my cool most of the time. I had to step away a few times. I kept my cool. The story ended. He gave me his papers. We got his papers. My car is repaired. His insurance paid for it. We could have solved it in 5 minutes. But the story goes through in my mind once in a while. So, nothing happened. But I could potentially go into prison for it just by taking the man down. What if I just punch him in the nose and he fell with his head on his car and from his car on a stone, cracked open his skull, seeing us that he had no brain, so he could not do anything about his behavior. And therefore I went to jail, and I make it a little bit light because I wanted to do that. But see, it is in that moment of that decision, and to not fully go. I embraced my emotion of anger, but to not act upon that anger, that actually defined my destiny. Because everyone could see in that moment, specifically here in the US, these things can go quickly very wrong. You get into the legal system, you have a name. I already have a name as an author. You get all these things around you. In worst case, I could have ended up a few days in jail, if not longer, if I would be accused of manslaughter, or if they found out that I'm a skilled martial artist and said, there is no way that and this guy is maybe, I don't know, hunk-a-dunk, and he could never do something against someone like skilled like me that would even work against me instead of from me. Does that make sense? So some people would say, yeah, that was fate that happened to me. I couldn't help it. The man was very aggressive. Irene was there. The man was at some point in time really here. And I felt super threatened. Yeah. So, a good lawyer could probably get me out of it as self-defense. Another lawyer maybe could have, got to his family and say that I was the aggressor. Who knows, right? So destiny, that's not so clear cut as it is. And it's definitely clear when you think about the decisions you took in your life and take some scenarios like I did, like, oh, that could have gone wrong. Another thing, which is way more fun to think about, is like, just a few days ago, well, just maybe last week, the Powerball. Powerball is a huge lottery in the United States. And the prize was $670 million jackpot. And one person won it in California, and I had a ticket too. That was my fate and my destiny to not win, together with millions of other people who not won that lottery. Was it that person, fate or destiny, or is it just numbers? Is it just a number game, a pure chance that it is? A lot of people believe that, right? So here is the thing. Do you know that the whole thing about statistics is actually relatively young? It's only a few years old. And there's a great book about it, and it's called Against the Odds, not Against the Gods, but it's Against the Odds, ODDS, right? And it describes how statistics, and probability mostly, not only statistic, but it's not the same, by the way. Yes, you mathematicians online, I know that. Probabilities and statistics are the same, but it explains a little bit statistics, but goes mostly about probability. And it's a relatively young science accepted in most societies, right? In all societies, the belief in destiny and fate was so big that probability and chance, for something like an insurance would not be accepted. And you might think, Sean, that's kind of bogus. I can guarantee you right now, go in your plane, if you don't live there right now already, go to some places in Asia where they have this strong belief, and it's not a negative belief in fate or too positive belief in destiny. Is very well, cultures who just, don't take insurances for everyone, who say, because they say, why would you pay for something that you don't even know when it's going to happen, right? So we in our society we believe so much in, and we are so afraid that things can happen to us that we insure ourselves in case it does. Now, an insurance company gambles, of course, that it doesn't. And if it gets a lot of people, then the chances that it happens to all of them becomes very slim, which is a probability equation. Does that make sense? So there has nothing to do with fate. That has all to do with chance, right? And if you don't believe in chance, but you believe in fate, then you don't need any. Then you don't need any insurance because it happens to you anyhow, right? Does that make sense? You cannot insure yourself for things that are destined to happen to you. So there's way more thing and profoundness in this topic than you might think. So anyhow, that brings us to the second word. What is then destiny? Destiny comes from the Latin word destinare. If you speak some Spanish or speak some French, you can actually hear still the same root of the words in there. The Roman languages, Italian, Spanish are derived from Latin much closer than our languages, and our language is Dutch and English. That's what I'm speaking right now. But it means firmly established. So it kind of says the same thing, but over time, the word destination and destiny has something to do most of the times where people believe they have a choice. They make their own destiny. It's your destiny, it's a calling. And where fate is actually a little bit more something that comes over you. Does that make sense? That is mostly the time what the common belief is. Now, okay, and then you come into now is it all predestined? And if it's predestined, then there are who does that then? Now there are a few things, right? God, in whatever religion you are, is probably the most person who is accused from writing in a book what happens to us besides Santa Claus and Sinterklaas, right? Because they have books too, and they wrote that down too. But then the next one is definitely God, and trust me, I'm a Christian. I don't want to make fun of God, but I also know that he has a big side of humor as well. So God has that. So that's one thing. I'll talk to God in a moment. But there are other things, and some definitely in the 90s, 80s, maybe that was very popular, and that is called the Akashic records, right? And the Akashic record says that you can tap into a person's record and you see what happened to him and what happens to her. And for a while I did that a little bit, and that would already go against the beliefs of Takashi records. You can never look into a record if the other person doesn't give you permission. Now, I work with some people who are pretty skilled at it, and it's kind of always like surprising what those people know. Like, wow, my gosh, maybe it is all true, right? Maybe they can look in my future and in my and in my past. That's kind of, I met quite a few people that I was really like surprised what they knew. And so I remember one trip when I went to Moscow. I had to teach there, and then I met a woman, and I think her name is Katerina, but we call her Katya, and she is supposed to be, a very skillful psychic. And I thought it was fun to go to, and she did a couple of things, and then she talked to me for a while, and she mentioned to me what I did in the past, and I was utterly surprised, to be honest. I mean, the things were so precise. Some of these things I actually had to look up myself whether they were correct or not, but she knew them. And then she said something to me. She said, "Hey, Jean, you know what? I don't care actually what already happened in your life, but I just do that so that you believe me about the things that I tell you that I will tell you about in the future." And so she told me a couple of things in the future, and so far actually seems pretty accurate there too. So I don't know what it is, but I must say one thing that surprised me in the talk is he also said a couple of things that I would love to happen. Does that make sense? Those are the direction I wanted to go to. And here it becomes a little bit iffy, right? Because she already knew that because of the talks that we did. And she's skilled in some things that I used to do a lot in the past, just for fun and giggles, to predict people's futures and stuff like that. So if you know someone's direction, and you enforce that in that person, guess what actions I take? I'll take those actions in that direction with more confidence. And therefore, they start to happen more in my life. And therefore, all these things that she said are more likely to happen. And that's why I remember her, right? I should also remember and tell you all the stories about the people that I met in a fair and looked in a glass bowl and put down some cards and killed a bird and opened their intestines and then look in it, or in a coffee cup, and all this crap that didn't work out. We don't tell those stories, right? We tell the story that, therefore it sometimes seems that those people has tremendous power. So be very careful with it. If you believe in it, do that. It's always fun to go there, by the way. So, but you have that Akashic records, and there are other names for that. They believe that everything is already written in some sort of a database out there. Does Sean believe in that? No, really, no. Actually, to be honest, the more I read about it, the less I believe that. And the reason why is actually you go back to God. And I go back to my own beliefs. So again, this podcast or this thing is never meant to come to how do you sway you to one belief or the other. I'm just telling you what I learned in life. I'm not the youngest person anymore, so I think I have something to share. But I do believe in God, and I do believe that He is the creator of that what we see, at least in His purest form. And humans do everything to destroy that as fast as we can, you know. So, but that's on us. That is have nothing to do with God. So if God would have foreseen that, I probably, if I, cook a nice meal for people and they don't eat it, I probably next time I get the same people, I probably don't cook it anymore. And maybe if God gets a second chance to create the world, He might not create it at all, at least not for a bunch of idiots, as what we call human beings, who can destroy the world in less than 150 years in the full existence of maybe millions of years, right? Can you imagine how quickly we go through the oil that we have? And I was thinking about, I'm sitting here in a nice new apartment, and luckily here there's not a nature granite on our countertops, granite when you cook, granite. And I think, man, how many apartments do we build? And how much granite can we get finally out of the earth, right? There must be a time that it stops. It took thousands of years, if not millions, to make granite. We're talking only about oil resources, but talk about all the other stuff that we pull out of the earth, right? And that's why some of the computer things are so expensive, because the metals that we need to make some of these computer things, like chips and more elaborated chips, are so rare to find, and we pull it out of the earth, and just like it's nothing. Anyhow, but think about it like this, right? If I'm the inventor, let's say my name is Tesla. Well, Tesla himself did not make the Tesla car, but just for fun and giggles, let's say I'm Tesla and I made the car, right? So I am the creator of the car, and I give the car to my friend Matthew, and Matthew drives in it, and he drives against a brick wall. Whose fault is that? Was that my destiny, that I destined him to drive in a car against a brick wall because I made that car? Or was it the driver of the car? Well, obviously in this situation, it's the driver of the car, right? It's not the creator of the car. Now, let's say I make a gun, right? Like Smith & Wesson, famous guns in here in the US. Oh, okay, you make a weapon, but in the end, even if it's an evil thing, a weapon, it's the guy who pulls the trigger, Does that mean that Smith and Wesson is without any responsibility? No, I think they feel responsible because of the misuse of their inventions. I do think that. I think if they have at least some integrity, they think about themselves. In the weapon industry, maybe there's no one who thinks like that, who knows, right? But I'm sure there are also people who believe that it is a good thing to make weapons and that makes us safe. I don't know about these things, right? I'm just saying the creator by itself cannot always be blamed for what happened with the creation, right? There is definitely a level of responsibility in there, but it cannot be blamed. And for the longest time, thousands of years, people equate that as the same. God created the world and therefore also created, our future. And that is not true. And that's also found in his own creation, right? Because what I always say in my lessons, if there is one thing, the most beautiful thing that God gave us, it's the matter of choice, right? Does that make sense? And there's complete freedom in our choice if you do it well. But over time, the freedom of choice becomes less. Remember, beliefs, habits, and the way we make our decisions. But in principle, choices are completely open, and therefore, probability kicks in really fast. And if you know something about probability, the variables of the 7 billion people that are walking now on this earth with all the freedom of choice, that's just insane variable where we can take this earth, right? Because of those variables. Now, is there maybe a higher power that, figure out where it will be and can predict it? Well, I can predict it right now. If we keep going like this, our earth will be in a few hundred years not livable anymore. You don't have to be any psychic to be that, right? So we probably come up with another thing. So, but that's where I think where I would stimulate you to find your answer, right? There's always a matter of choice. And there are people who are born in way worse circumstances than I have been born in and made a great life for themselves. And you cannot say that's luck. There is maybe some luck involved, like the guy or the girl in Los Angeles who won in California. I don't know if she's from Los Angeles, but who won $670 million. Okay, there's a form of luck involved, but a lot of people actually they made their own luck, right? But is that true for everyone? I don't think that is true for everyone. There are places where you are born, and that's a really tall order to force that luck upon you, right? By the way, this form of thinking is already something new for most people, that you can actually make your own destiny. You need other people. Some people become ruthless and scrupulous, and then you say, hey, I want to be rich and I want to be happy, and nothing around me happens. And then they find themselves that they are maybe happy and rich, but not really happy because they have no friends anymore. So yeah, you can construct your life and you can create your own destiny. Is there some higher power involved? I think what my higher power teaches me is that the choice that was given to me, I need to treat that with the utmost responsibility. That's where I feel that the creator of this life put something in us that do that. And strangely enough, people who treat their choices with a lot of responsibility become big influencers in life. Some people who didn't do that with a lot of responsibility also became big influences in life as well. So I don't know on what side you fall, but I decided, the side that has a close relationship with the word destiny. I decided to do that. I try to do it with the utmost integrity and responsibility in service of other people, but it's a pure choice. And I cannot say because of that I'm a better person. It's just my personal belief, right? Some people who don't have that at all, they don't care whether you're happy, they don't care if you die, they have no scruples, they have no integrity, and they could be fully happy people. Some sociopaths and some psychopaths are fully happy people, right? So we cannot just equate these things together. We cannot equate happiness together with the right choices. It's always a personal choice, and therefore destiny is also a personal choice. Now, there are some magical things. I want to close with that because we're reaching the 45 minutes. There are some things, like I said in the beginning, that some people feel some sort of a calling or some sort of a draw to something. Like, I felt very drawn to dancing at a very young age. I could not stop watching Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and who have you not. But for some reason, fate, brought me on the path of martial arts. And I happened to be pretty talented in it, and I grew up pretty rough. I had brothers, and we would fight all the time, and in our neighborhood there was some fighting going on, and my dad was in the military, so fighting was some sort of a common talk. So I became a martial artist, became pretty good at it, and I felt never really 100% happy in it, to be honest. And then fate, second time in my life, came interfered a little bit and brought me on the dance floor. And that clicked with me, and I acted upon it, right? I took a decision to do something with it. Maybe fate knocked on my dance door a million times before that, but I forgot it already, right? And I used to go with my parents to Spain on vacation, and in those times we had discos. You have to be from a specific generation to understand what it means to go to a discotheque. Yeah, but we did that, in the summer specifically, and I danced my heart out, and I loved it. I mean, you couldn't wait the day until the evening started and dance with all these cute girls, and it was so fun, and I loved it. And my parents even asked me why, you should dancing, and I thought, yeah, and then I went back to my martial arts and thought it was great. And stuff like that. So that's fate. I mean, I don't know how many times it knocked on my door already. It just sounds way nicer if I say, hey, fate, and then one day, it knocked on my door again, and I changed my whole life to become a dancer. That's a much more interesting story. But in all reality, who knows how often you have been prompted to go in a certain direction. And if that all goes well, then these become great stories of destiny and stuff like that. But millions and millions of people, they either were deaf to it, or they just, made the wrong gamble. Yeah, took the wrong route, took the wrong turn. So in the end of the day, it comes down to those three things that I always talk about. It's, what are your beliefs, right? I believe there is always a higher calling in us, and therefore I'm looking for it. And therefore I'm more prone to find it. If you say, hey, life happens to you, I don't care, I go out of the door and what happens to me, probably that's how your life is going to be as well. So, and the habits, if you smoke a lot and you keep on smoking, now that we know all this stuff, and you get lung cancer, you cannot say, that happened to me. Yes, it happened to you because you smoked your whole life. Yeah, so, and I'm sorry, I've been a smoker. That's why I take this example. I'm not blaming you guys, but a lot of people say, that's also with being overweighted. It's just with some people, they can't do anything about it because, it's their metabolism. But a lot of people, most, actually, they can't do something about it. And they expect to be healthy and slim and thin again in a year, which is possible, by the way, but they forgot that it took 40 years to get this fat. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not just making fun of fat people, but I'm just saying responsibility in there, right? So overnight success never happened overnight. That's typically 15 years in the making, and things that are bad in your life often also are 15 years in the making, unless you take a really bad decision, like I told you in the story in the beginning, that I easily could have made, right? And I don't know why I didn't, when I did not take that man down who was pretty nasty to me in our way, right? So all these choices in our life, and you can say it's fate or destiny, I say you want to reflect on your life, on the good things. And if the good things often also are made because you made really good decisions in your life, maybe with some luck, like winning the lottery, who knows, or meeting the right people, which is another thing, right? You meet the right people if you go and look for the right people. Yeah, some people you meet by chance and other people you don't. And that's true for your health. And there are enough other things that could happen to you that are outside your control. Yes. Yeah, you could get in a car accident and it's outside your control. So think about this, guys. Yes, destiny, maybe it's there. Fate, maybe it's there. But try also to take control where you want to take control, and then accept the things that you can control. That's basically what fate is. And that gives you the easiest life, right? Take responsibility for the things you can control, and just accept the things that you can control. That's it. All right. This was Sean with The Place. I hope you liked it. If not, then just write us a message, and maybe we talk the next time about a topic that you do like. If you do really like it, invite your friends and family and so on also to watch the show. It's always for free, and it always will be. Thank you for listening to me. I hope to see you next week at 12 o'clock at Dallas time. I actually don't know when we go back to winter time or whatever that's called. But anyhow, it is Dallas 12 o'clock time and whatever that is in the rest of the world. If you are here with me on Zoom, stay tuned, and I will talk a little bit more in the after party. For the rest, I say to you, bye bye.